wish I knew the science behind color. So Lightroom really does not teach you anything about color. It doesn't explain what it's doing to color. It just says red, blue, green, luminance. So it's up to you to really understand color, how colors interact. So if you're working in Lightroom, it's 80% color. So if you don't understand color, you really do not know what you're doing. And we want to understand the opposite colors for 3 pairs: red and cyan, purple and green, and blue and yellow. There are 6 we want to memorize. For example, if you've got too much red in your image, you don't actually try to take red out of your image, but you rather add in its opposite colors, okay? So cyan, and it will remove the colors you don't want. And that will play out multiple times editing a photo. You want to remove a color, but to do that, you have to add in its opposite color. If you add in purple, it's not gonna make your orange skin tones purple. It's just gonna make them more red because that's in between them in the color wheel. And then if you add green to your orange skin tones, it's gonna make your orange skin tones a little more yellow. Most people would think they would come off a bit green. So that's just one example of why you really need to understand color. So I wish I learnt the color wheel. I wish I learnt the curves. I wish I learnt a little bit about split toning, color theory with split toning, how if you add yellow with split toning, what will that do to my skin tones? I wish I knew that sort of stuff when it came to color theory, but especially the curves when it comes to color theory. So the curves can look very confusing, and they're even more confusing when you don't understand color theory because they are simply all based on color. The curves here, so we've got the red, green, and blue channels, and like I said before, digital colors are all made up of a combination of red, green, and blue, so they're giving us these curves here. And then if we look at the red, green, and blue on our color wheel, you can see that they are equally spaced apart. So now we can mix colors and go anywhere around the color wheel. And then that brings us to number 2, is I wish I knew the curves. So as soon as you get into Lightroom, you want to, everyone plays around with HSL, exposure, contrast slider, because they're the easy, straightforward things to learn. But it's all about the curves, okay? So even if you aren't comfortable with the curves, you want to start to learn them. It might take a wee while to get used to them, but they are simply the most powerful tool, and I very rarely see great edits or styles without using the curves. I've done over 250 Lightroom tutorials. I have over 200 videos in my course. Every image, good curve adjustments. They play a really important role, I'd say, in just about every image I've ever seen. So quite simply, curves are the most important thing. I think a lot of people underestimate curves, or they stay away from the curves. They don't like the curves, they find them confusing, but I'm telling you, you need to understand them. So I wish I straight away at least understood what the curves did again, so you could just be very intentional in Lightroom without the guessing, or just like, this is what someone else did, I'm gonna do it, and I don't actually know why. You have to understand the curves, about how it affects the highlights, the midtones, the shadows, and why it's so much more powerful than the sliders. And it's so much more powerful than the sliders because you have so much more control, but then with that control, you could go very wrong as well. Therefore, you really have to understand the curves. Even this one here, this is also a nice curve that many people look over. But red, green, and blue, and then this curve as well. And if you want to learn the curves, I've got a free in-depth training on the curves, on just what they do. In the free training, you'll understand what the curves do. In more advanced trainings, such as in the course, we go into styles with curves, and that gets a bit more advanced. We've got the red, green, and blue channels, and like I said before, digital colors are all made up of a combination of red, green, and blue, so they're giving us these curves here. And then if we look at the red, green, and blue on our color wheel, you can see that they are equally spaced apart. So now we can mix colors and go anywhere around the color wheel. So if you only had two colors, you could only just go across and balance those two colors. But if you just add in one more color equally spaced apart, you can start mixing and then move anywhere within the color wheel. So of red is cyan, introducing red, taking red out, we get cyan, green in, green out, we get purple or magenta, blue in, blue out, we're gonna get yellow. Why cyan when you remove red? This is really important to understand. It's not that you have cyan down here in the curves, it's that when you pull red out, you have more green and blue left in your image, the other two curves. Because you haven't removed those colors yet, you have a higher percentage of green and blue in your image. And then if you look at a color wheel, what color do green and blue make when you mix them together? Cyan. We can create any color on the visible spectrum. I wish there was no one way to edit a photo. So when I first started, I watched a lot of tutorials. I saw common themes like reds in the shadows, and I was like, now I've got it. Reds in the shadows is the key to good editing. It's super contextual. Every style is completely different. There is S-curves, there's fades. There is very minimal S-curves where only the shadows have a little bit of contrast. Curves like this. There's curves just a little bit in the mids. There is all sorts going on in the color channels. Most often it's an S-curve because that allows color placement, which is very important. When we do this in the curves, it adds it into the entire image, and now it's even more targeted. See how thin that line is now? So I see all sorts of people editing, and like sometimes people are putting their fades in the color channels, and then some people are doing it in this RGB curve here, and some people are adding all their contrast in the RGB color curves, and some people are taking contrast out up here, but then doing heaps of contrast in the curves. So there's no one way. So when you see one person do a fade in the shadows, there's multiple ways to put fade in the shadows. Some people purposely blow out their highlights. So some people swear by the histogram and can edit their image according to the histogram, but some people couldn't care less about the histogram, blowing out those highlights. It looks filmy, it looks artistic, it looks nice sometimes, if that's the style you're going for. I remember someone commented on my YouTube that when they started editing, they wished they kept it very, very simple, stayed away from the curves and just did minimal adjustments, and that when they began, they made way too many adjustments and just ruined their images. And I kind of agree with this, but I disagree with it. A good edit, it's a lot like, say, a pro athlete, pro basketball. You're making the fundamentals, simple adjustments, but what's hard about these simple adjustments is, so a basketball player, they do the same things as an amateur, but it's about the right move at the right time at the right amount. So editing is like that, where it's knowing what move to make at the right time, at the right amount, and why. So you can have this very complicated looking edit on here, and then the final result can look very nice. It can look very minimally edited. It can look very natural. So that person that said that they wish they kept it very, very simple probably just didn't know what they were doing in Lightroom to get edits like this. So sometimes very, very minimal work in the curves, and then sometimes a lot more, but it's intent in knowing the reason for your adjustments that unlocks everything and keeps you from over editing. When you walk away and come back, you're like, oh, it looks terrible now. So it stops all that when you understand what you are doing with the tools very in depth. And then some photos take a lot more work than other photos, and then some don't take any at all, very, very minimal editing. But like I said, it's just the right move at the right time at the right amount makes your edits look great and not over edited and messy and amateur. I wish I knew the power of cleaning up your images. It's really, really simple, but if you just remove a lot of things, distractions from your image, and you realize what distractions are, it can really, really level up your editing, because then you concentrate on what is in the photo and the main aspects of the photo, and your eye gets guided to those main things a lot better. And then another quick thing I wish I knew is just collections. So I didn't really use collections for a bit. So for example, now I've got a collection of all the guest editors in my course here. So over 200 images of these amazing edits, and I've organized them. And now these are the guest editors in my course that teach and supply the raw image and the preset and show everyone how they break stuff down. And now I have them very well organized, and I didn't do that starting off, and I think it's something I wish I did differently. So another thing similar to the curves in understanding color, I used to think, and I think a lot of other people think this as well, you think you can do everything in split toning and HSL. I used to think, well, if I've got every shade of red in the slider, I used to think that, but you don't. I was like, if I just play with the sliders, I will be able to eventually get the color of, say, this person's greens I'm trying to imitate, but that's not true. And then I thought, what if I add some like orange into the shadows and then move the orange up here? I would get this unique tone of orange. But you don't get that. You have to use the curves. So that comes back to the curves. I thought I could recreate any color, any person's style by staying away from the curves and just focusing on HSL, so hue, saturation, and luminance, and split toning. But you simply can't, and you have to be using curves to get 98% of people's style. And the reason that is because curves is so much more precise. It's so like drastically more precise than split toning, and split toning affects your entire image a lot. For example, orange in the shadows, it is adding orange to my entire image, and then say we do something in the curves, we can just add the tiniest bit of red, or if we wanted, we could only put it in the darkest of darkest areas, if that's what we wanted to do. And then what this leads to is being able to work with curves and HSL and split toning together. So I wish I knew how tools interact with each other instead of thinking of them separately. So I used to think I will make an adjustment in the curves to counteract or balance an adjustment in the split toning here. So we've got orange in the highlights here, off, on, gives it nice and warm. Maybe it's too warm in the highlights. So up here in the curves, let's just take a bit of that warmth out by just adding some blue in with the curves, but in a very targeted area of the image, because curves are way more targeted. And then you are able to interlink all these tools from white balance. How does white balance affect your HSL, and how does HSL, or how does calibration affect your HSL and how HSL affects split toning. If you're a beginner, if you feel like you're playing around in Lightroom, it's not good at all. You shouldn't feel like that. You should be able to make intentional edits. Okay, so the final thing I wish I knew when I started. So when I started, there's a lot less tutorials online, and I just wanted to know how people edited. I would have done anything to just have someone show me how they edit, how to give me your raw image, your preset, and your instructions, and just show me instead of me looking online for these tutorials, getting little bits and pieces. So that's exactly what I have done. I was very lucky. Through my YouTube tutorial, I learned editing. I was getting sent these raw images, sometimes the settings, but that's what let me learn really fast. So within my course now, it's exactly what I've recreated. So now you can put everything you've learned, all the color and all the curves that you've learned, and you are going to download the raw image and the presets to follow along every step of the way and understand it, because we have gone over so many different ways of editing and we've really covered the theory already so far. So what I recommend is make sure you download every single raw image and the presets, and when you make your way through how to find your style, how to take aspects of other photographers and then combine those aspects, the ones you like, and then over time build the style you like. So once you follow these guest editors, you're gonna acquire a lot of building blocks of skills on little takeaways each guest editor does, the clarity of another, the texture, the brightness of one, and you're gonna get all these building blocks in your arsenal of editing knowledge, and you are gonna be able to build your own style because you also understand the theory. The guest section is down here in section 4 is because you're using all this knowledge that we have gone over in this section to follow these editors here. So when these really talented people give you the raw image, the preset, and take you through complete edit, you will understand every move they make. So if they're doing something with the curves, we cover everything there is to know about curves and why you would use curves. So you'll remember from this section why they are doing it. Even if they don't explain, a lot of them are really good teachers. Some of them might miss or slightly miss why they are doing something with the curves, but you will know really in depth why by going through all these earlier lessons. Okay, we want a really strong foundation from all of these lessons up top, and then when we come down we can get a bit more precise on edits, but we need that strong foundation of knowledge, and then we can get a bit fancy with creating different styles and little, or like the finishing touches of edits and what creates styles down here.
And welcome to this guest editor class for Martin's course here. So I have a photo.
Hey. So the way I'm improving my own editing now is actually within my own course, because I'm getting all these amazing edits from these really talented photographers. It's very interesting to see how they work with curves in different styles. So like this one, for example, the curves are not an S curve at all, and I probably wouldn't have thought that for the style. These really nice, warm, it's a very cinematic style because it's underexposed, and I would have thought there would be more of an S curve, so I was very surprised. And then for example, Daniel Jensen here, I would not have thought he used such a steep S curve in these ones, for example. But after seeing so many different styles, like hundreds, how they do contrast, how to do the color placement, how to do the brushing and filters, you really learn much faster this way, rather than guessing, playing around in Lightroom, hoping you'll you'll get something you like. How I'm improving my editing now, because it's transcended any free information out there on YouTube. And I wish I knew skin tones better. So the main ones for skin tone, white balance, I mean, obviously everything to do with color, so it's going to be curves, HSL, split toning, calibration, yeah, everything. But that's super crucial is skin tones, and that's going to really come down to tools and color, so your knowledge of tools and color. Oranges are affecting like all her skin tone, or the reds is only her lips. So you can actually change how this works. So let's go a little this way, and now let's look at the reds. It's affecting like her cheek now, and that was not happening before. Her entire skin tone was just oranges, but now, since we did the primary, some of it is reds now, and this is like helping white balance. Like, white balance isn't perfect sometimes, in particular because it's like, I just cannot get their colors with the HSL. Like, my oranges just don't look like their oranges, or my greens don't look like their greens. And then you just go into the calibration, and you get this like nice softish yellow bright.
For the skin tones, as you can see, it really helps. So I'm gonna put them here and not have so much saturation. So I do like this better.
So that's pretty much what I wish I knew. I wish I knew the color theory, because 90% of Lightroom is color. Like, even the contrast tools you would think don't influence color, but they do, because you're influencing brightness, and that influences your color. So you have to understand how that even affects your colors. So I wish I knew color theory for sure, very in depth, in context to Lightroom. Some people understand color, but they don't understand it in context to Lightroom. I wish I knew how tools interact with each other, and that only comes from a very good in-depth understanding of the tools. I wish I knew, similar to what I just said before, but like working how tools interact with each other, overlapping, counterbalancing, and not looking over edited, because you understand how tools interact, and that you have to use curves to achieve some results. Okay, you simply have to. You can't make up for not using the curves in HSL or split toning. And I also wish at the beginning there's no one way to edit a photo. So for example, someone might be bringing down the highlights, and then you think every photo you edit you should be drastically bringing down the highlights. Not necessarily. So many different styles, and they all look really good, and they all have slightly different styles and effects and different reasons that they look good. So you have to move tools with intent, and you can't just every edit bring down the highlights because you saw one person you like do that. There's so many different amazing styles, and they use the tools all very differently. So don't get fixated on one way to edit. And then the last thing was, I just wanted to know how people edited. So that's what I've done for you guys who want to go through that free training, the free trainings through my emails, and then enroll in the course to learn that extra depth into the tools and color, and getting some really amazing results to your images.
Before the course I've been like hunting for these unicorn moments, and the reality is because the unicorn moment happens after the photo is taken. That's how you make the shot. I mean, it's obvious having done the course to me. I really didn't realize how, what is kind of an underwhelming shot when you take it in RAW can be like amazing.
I am very honored to be selected as one of the guest editors on Martin's course. I have watched a bunch of workshops, courses, and everything on the internet available. I buy a lot of courses. I like to study the market, and definitely Martin's was the best and the most complete one.
And that's it for this one, guys. Free training. Comment what you guys want to see. If you found this helpful, what do you guys wish you knew? And catch you in the next one.